My mother called exactly 14 days before Christmas Eve to tell me I was too embarrassing to attend the family dinner. I simply agreed and hung up. On Christmas morning, they woke up to find my face on the cover of Forbes. But the worst part for them was not realizing I was wealthy. It was discovering the terrifying reason why I had kept my success a secret for so long. My name is Claire Hartwell, and if there is one thing I have mastered in my 32 years of life, it is the art of being underestimated. I was sitting in my office on the top floor of the building that housed Meridian Aegis, the data security firm I had built from a laptop in a coffee shop into a global fortress of digital privacy. The lights of Austin, Texas, sprawled out beneath me like a circuit board. Humming with the energy of a Tuesday night, it was nearly 9 in the evening. Most of my staff had gone home to their families, to their warm dinners, to lives that did not involve decrypting threat vectors or managing 9-figure valuation anxieties. I was tired. It was the kind of exhaustion that settles deep in the bones, the satisfying ache of work that actually matters. I was reviewing the final press proofs on my tablet, scrolling through the embargoed PDF that was currently sitting on a server in New York, waiting for the clock to run out. Then my phone rang. The screen lit up with a photo I had taken years ago. My mother, Marjorie, holding a glass of Chardonnay, smiling that tight, practiced smile that she reserved for charity galas and country club luncheons. I stared at the vibrating phone for a moment. My chest tightened, a reflexive physical reaction conditioned by 3 decades of subtle criticisms and polite dismissals. I took a breath, swiped the screen, and put the phone to my ear. "Hello, Mother," I said, keeping my voice even. "Claire, darling," she began. Her voice was breathless, the way it always got when she was planning an event. It was a tone I associated with floral arrangements, seating charts, and high anxiety. "I'm so glad I caught you. I know you are probably, well, are you working? Or are you at home?" "I am at the office," I said. "Still?" She sighed, a sound that managed to convey disappointment and pity simultaneously. "You work so hard for that little company. Claire, I worry about you. You sound exhausted." "I am fine, Mom. What is going on?" "Well, it is about Christmas," she said. The breathless quality vanished, replaced by a steely, diplomatic cadence. This was the voice she used when she had to fire a housekeeper or send back a bottle of wine. "We need to talk about the logistics for the 24th and 25th. I leaned back in my ergonomic chair, the leather creaking softly. "I already booked my flight into Palm Beach. I arrive on the 23rd. I rented a car so you do not have to pick me up." There was a pause on the other end of the line. It was a heavy, loaded silence. "That is actually what I wanted to discuss," she said. "You know this year is special. It is not just our usual family dinner. It is Tessa's big introduction." I knew about this. My cousin, Tessa Langford, had recently become engaged to Graham Wexler IV. In the ecosystem of Palm Beach society, this was akin to a royal wedding. The Wexlers were not just rich. They were institutional. They were the kind of family that had buildings named after them at Ivy League universities and had not flown commercial since the 1970s. They valued pedigree, polish, and a very specific brand of effortless perfection. "I know," I said. "I am happy for her. I bought a nice gift." "That is sweet, Claire, really," my mother said, and I could hear the hesitation creeping in. "But the thing is, the Wexlers are particular. They are bringing Graham's parents and his grandmother. It is going to be a very intimate, very high-stakes evening. They judge everything: appearance, status, connection." "Okay," I said, though I already felt the cold prickle of intuition on the back of my neck. "And?" "And," she exhaled, "your father and I have been talking, and Tessa's mother agrees. We think it might be best if you sat this one out." The words hung in the air, suspended in the silence of my high-tech office. I blinked, looking at the blinking cursor on my computer screen. "Excuse me?" "Oh, do not make this difficult, Claire," she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. as if she were conspiring with me for my own benefit. Look, we love you. You know that. But let's be realistic. Well, you are a bit of a wild card right now. You arrive in those rented economy cars. Your clothes are always so functional. You work in tech support or whatever it is, and you know how the Wexlers are about careers. They value stability, prestige. You are 32, unmarried, struggling with that startup of yours, living in Texas of all places. I gripped the phone tighter. My company is not a startup anymore, Mom, and I am not struggling. To them, you are, she cut in sharply. To people like the Wexlers, if you are not a partner at a law firm or a surgeon, you are unemployed. And frankly, Claire, you look tired. You look like you are barely scraping by. We just do not want you to feel uncomfortable, and we certainly do not want Tessa to feel uncomfortable. Uncomfortable? I repeated. Embarrassed, she corrected herself, deciding to abandon the diplomacy. We do not want Tessa to be embarrassed. She has worked very hard to land Graham. This dinner has to be a tableau of perfection. Everyone needs to fit the part. Your brother, the lawyer, your sister, the doctor. They make sense. They fit the narrative. You are just too unpredictable. You are a loose thread in the tapestry, darling. I sat there, frozen. It was not the first time I had been excluded. Over the years, I had been conveniently forgotten for gala tables, left out of family portraits because my outfit clashed, or seated at the children's table long after I had graduated college. But this was different. This was Christmas. This was the one time of year when blood was supposed to matter more than bank accounts. I am your daughter, I said, my voice low. I am family. You are asking me not to come home for Christmas because I might make Tessa look bad in front of her fiancé's parents? It is for Tessa's future, my mother said, sounding defensive now. Why can you not be big enough to understand that? Why does it always have to be about your feelings? Think about the family image for once. Just this once. Stay in Austin. We will send you a nice gift. We will FaceTime you on Christmas morning before the Wexlers come over for brunch. So I am being hidden away, I said, like a dirty secret. You are being protected, she insisted, and we are protecting ourselves. Please, Claire, do not cause a scene. Just tell everyone you were too busy with work. It is a believable excuse. Everyone knows you are always working on that computer. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. It was surgical. She had dissected my life, my choices, my career, my independence, and categorized them all as failures worthy of exile. She saw my simple clothes, which were actually bespoke cashmere and silk, as signs of poverty. She saw my refusal to talk about money as a lack of funds. She saw my life in Austin as a retreat, not a conquest. I felt a flash of heat rise in my chest, a desire to scream at her. I wanted to tell her that the little company she scorned had just closed a contract with the Department of Defense. I wanted to tell her that the rented economy car was a choice I made to avoid being treated like a walking wallet by my own relatives. I wanted to tell her that my net worth was likely higher than the Wexlers and the Langfords combined. But I stopped. I looked out the window at the Austin skyline. I looked at the reflection of my face in the glass. I looked calm. I looked dangerous. If I told her now, she would backpedal. She would invite me, but she would not invite me. Claire, her daughter, she would invite Claire the CEO, Claire the net worth, Claire the trophy. She would parade me in front of the Wexlers to boost her own stock. It would be fake. It would be a transaction, not a relationship. No, I would not give her that satisfaction, not yet. Claire? She asked, her voice sharp with impatience. Are you still there? I am here, I said. My voice was frighteningly steady. It sounded like the voice I used in boardroom negotiations when I was about to dismantle a competitor. So, she pressed, can we count on you to do the right thing? I understand, I said. You are right. Mom, I would not want to ruin the aesthetic. I would hate to be the reason Tessa loses her chance at the Wexler fortune. I heard her exhale, a long sound of relief. Oh, thank you. Darling, I knew you would be reasonable. It is just for 1 year. Next year, once the ring is on her finger, it will be different. I am sure it will be, I said. I will cancel my flight. Perfect, she said. We will miss you, of course, but this is for the best. Good night, Claire. Good night, Mother, I said. I hope you have a perfect dinner. I hope it is everything you dreamed of. I ended the call. The silence rushed back into the room, but it felt different now. It did not feel lonely. It felt charged. I placed the phone face down on my mahogany desk. My hand was trembling slightly, not from sadness, but from the sheer adrenaline of the severance. That was it, the final cut. They had not just trimmed a branch, they had chopped down the whole tree. I turned my chair toward the wall where a large digital calendar was synced to my company schedule. I looked at the date. December 25th. It was bolded in red. Underneath the date, there was a single entry. Forbes 30 under 30, Hall of Fame and cover story release. Global embargo lifts at 6 o'clock a.m. Est. I picked up my tablet again and opened the file I had been reviewing. There it was, the cover of the upcoming issue. It was a portrait of me standing in this very office, arms crossed, wearing a black turtleneck, staring straight into the lens with an expression of unapologetic authority. The headline was written in bold, gold letters, "The Silent Architect," and the subheadline, "How Claire Hartwell Built a $4 billion Empire While Her Family Begged Her to Get a Real Job." My mother had asked me to skip Christmas because I was embarrassing. She had asked me to disappear so I would not tarnish the family name. I looked at the digital proof, and for the first time in 14 days, the corner of my mouth twitched upward. It was a smile, but it did not reach my eyes. My eyes remained as cold as the glass window separating me from the world below. They wanted a perfect Christmas. They wanted a surprise. "Merry Christmas, Mom," I whispered to the empty room. "I got you exactly what you asked for." To grow up a Hartwell in Palm Beach is to understand that affection is a currency, traded daily, and subject to inflation based on your public achievements. My father, Richard, managed hedge funds and spoke of his children's lives as if they were asset classes. My mother, Marjorie, ran the social calendar of the coastline like a military general, her weapon of choice being the charity gala. Then there were my siblings. Carter, the oldest, was a partner at a white shoe law firm before he turned 30. Elena, the middle child, was a pediatric surgeon with a husband who was also a surgeon. They were the blue-chip stocks of the family portfolio. Reliable, presentable, dividends paid quarterly in the form of bragging rights at the country club. And then there was me. I was the volatile asset, the speculative investment that, in their eyes, had crashed and burned. I chose computer science, in any other family, in any other part of America. A degree in STEM would be a point of pride. In the Hartwell household, it was viewed as a trade school vocation. It was manual labor performed with a keyboard. When I graduated, my father asked me if I intended to spend my life fixing printers for people who had real jobs. I did not argue. I did not explain that the code I was writing was not for troubleshooting Wi-Fi routers, but for restructuring how data moved securely across the globe. I co-founded Meridian Aegis 7 years ago with 2 brilliant friends from MIT. We started in a garage, a cliché that my mother found particularly distasteful, but we did not stay there long. We built architectures for encrypted communication that attracted the attention of defense contractors, banking conglomerates, and eventually, federal agencies. But I never told my family. It started as a defensive measure. I knew that if I told my father I was looking for seed capital, he would want a board seat. He would want control. He would want to reshape my vision into something that made sense to his golf buddies. So I told them I was working in software security. I kept it vague, to them. Software security sounded like I was the person you called when your laptop had a virus. Over time, the silence morphed into something else. It became a test. I wanted to know if they could love me without the resume. I wanted to see if I warranted a seat at the table simply because I was Claire, their daughter and sister, or if the seat was reserved only for people who could enhance the family brand. I got my answer in 1,000 small cuts over the last decade. I remember a Thanksgiving dinner 3 years ago. I had just closed a Series B funding round that valued our company at $400 million. I was exhausted but exhilaratingly proud. I flew home, rented a compact sedan at the airport because I saw no point in wasting money on a luxury car just to drive 20 minutes to their estate, and arrived in jeans and a sweater. When I walked in, Carter was holding court in the living room, talking about a merger he had facilitated. He was wearing a watch that cost more than the average American earns in a year. My mother rushed over to me, not to hug me, but to whisper that I should go change before the guests arrived because I looked like a graduate student. During dinner, I tried to speak. I wanted to tell them that my team had just patented a new algorithm for quantum encryption. I started to explain the concept, the sheer beauty of the math involved. Elena cut me off. She held up a hand, her diamond bracelet catching the chandelier light, and said that technical talk gave her a headache. She turned to Carter and asked him to continue his story about the merger. My father nodded in agreement, pouring himself another glass of wine, completely ignoring the fact that his youngest daughter had been mid-sentence. I went silent. I looked around the table at the people who shared my DNA, and I felt like a ghost. I was there, but I was not substantive. I lacked the necessary gravity of prestige to pull their attention into my orbit. That night, I went to my old bedroom and opened my laptop. I checked my bank account. I had more liquidity in my checking account than Carter likely had in his entire retirement fund. I could have bought the house we were sitting in. I could have bought the club where they played tennis. I almost went downstairs and screamed it at them. I almost threw my portfolio on the mahogany dining table just to watch their expressions shift from boredom to greed. But I stopped myself. If I told them, the dynamic would change instantly. The interruptions would stop. The criticism of my clothes would turn into praise for my eccentric genius style. My father would suddenly have a lot of advice on how to manage my portfolio. My mother would want to host a gala in my honor. But it would be fake. They would respect the money, not me. They would love the Forbes cover, not the girl who coded until 4 a.m. because she believed in building something safer for the world. So I decided to keep the mask on. I decided to curate a life of intentional frugality when I was around them. I drove the rental cars. I wore the simple clothes. I let them pay for dinner and listened to my father make passive-aggressive jokes about how I should save my money because the tech industry was volatile. I became an investigator in my own life. I collected evidence, every snub, every forgotten birthday. Every time they introduced me to family friends as Claire, who is figuring things out, went into a mental dossier. I watched them fawn over Tessa's fiancé, Graham. From the moment he appeared on the scene, Graham was perfect. He was a Wexler. He had the right last name, the right trust fund, the right pedigree. They did not care if Graham was kind. They did not care if he was intelligent. They cared that he fit the picture. They treated him with a deference they had never shown me, their own flesh and blood. I tested them, again and again. Last Christmas, I gave my mother a scarf I had knitted myself. It was made of rare vicuña wool, one of the most expensive fibers on earth. But to the untrained eye, it just looked like a brown scarf. I wanted to see if she would appreciate the time and effort I put into making it. She opened the box, looked at it with a thin smile, and said, "Oh, how homemade. Thank you, Claire." I found it later that night in the donation pile in the mudroom. She had not even checked the label or felt the texture. She saw homemade and assumed cheap. She saw Claire and assumed worthless. That was the data point that hurt the most. It was not about money. It was about the complete lack of curiosity. They never asked me why I lived the way I did. They never asked what my software actually did. They had decided who I was, the black sheep, the failure, the embarrassment, and they refused to let any new information challenge that conclusion. I realized then that my silence was no longer a shield. It was a trap, and they had walked right into it. When my mother called me 14 days ago to uninvite me, it was not a surprise. It was the mathematical inevitability of their worldview. The call was not just about a dinner, It was a declaration of values. They were willing to excise a family member to maintain an aesthetic for the Wexlers. They were trading my presence for social climbing points. "You are too embarrassing," she had implied. The irony was suffocating. I was the only person in that family who had built something from nothing. I was the only one who did not rely on a famous last name or a legacy admission to get ahead. I was the American dream they claimed to admire. But because I did not wrap it in the packaging they recognized, they threw it in the trash. I looked at the mirror in my bathroom, staring at the woman who was about to be revealed to the world. I had spent years afraid that if I showed them who I really was, they would try to control me. Now, I realized I had nothing to fear. They could not control what they could not understand. The pain of the rejection was still there, a dull ache in the center of my chest, but it was being rapidly overtaken by a cold, hard resolve. I was done testing them. The experiment was over. The results were conclusive. My family did not love me. They loved a reflection of themselves, and I cast no reflection in their mirror. I walked over to my closet in Austin. It was not filled with the simple clothes I wore to Palm Beach. It was filled with structured blazers, silk blouses, and the kind of power suits that signaled authority in any boardroom from Tokyo to New York. I pulled out a dress I had bought specifically for the gala on Christmas Eve. It was a deep, midnight blue, the color of a bruised sky. It cost $6,000. I had never worn it. I had been saving it for a moment when I felt ready to stop hiding. I was ready now. The uninvite was the final severing of the cord. They had cut me loose, thinking they were trimming the fat. They had no idea they were cutting the anchor. I sat down on the edge of my bed and opened the folder on my phone marked Family. It contained the photos from the last 10 years, the ones where I was standing on the edge of the frame, the ones where I was looking at the camera while everyone else looked at Carter or Elena. I selected them all. My finger hovered over the delete button. I did not press it, not yet. I wanted to keep them. I wanted to remember exactly how small they made me feel, so that when the sun rose on Christmas morning, I would not feel a shred of guilt for what was about to happen. The secret was not just that I was rich. The secret was that I had outgrown them years ago, and I had stayed small only to give them a chance to be decent. They had failed. And now, the world, and the Wexlers, would know exactly what the Hartwell family had thrown away. I did not go to sleep after hanging up with my mother. Sleep was a luxury for people who were not orchestrating the demolition of their own public identities. Instead, I switched modes. I compartmentalized the hurt daughter and brought the CEO to the forefront. If the Hartwell family wanted to play games with perception, I would introduce them to the realities of aggressive reputation management. At 9:10 in the evening, I called Marcus, my head of communications. He picked up on the second ring, his voice sharp and alert. He was used to late calls, though usually they involved data breach protocols or crisis mitigation for our clients, not for me. "Claire?" he asked. "Is everything secure?" "The systems are fine, Marcus," I said, pacing the length of my office. "I am calling about the Forbes release. The embargo lifts on the 25th. "Yes, 6 in the morning Eastern Standard Time," Marcus replied. "We have the standard press kit ready, low-key, professional, focused on the tech, just like you asked. We are letting the numbers do the talking." "Scrap it," I said. There was a pause on the line. "Scrap the release strategy?" "I want to pivot," I said, my voice steady. "I want maximum amplification. I want you to coordinate with the digital team to ensure that when that cover drops, it is unavoidable. I want it on LinkedIn, Twitter, TechCrunch, the Wall Street Journal's morning briefing, and every major finance aggregator. Use the ad budget we set aside for Q1. Boost the posts. I want my face to be the first thing people see when they scroll their phones on Christmas morning while opening presents." "Claire," Marcus said, his tone shifting from professional to cautious, "we have spent years cultivating an image of quiet competence for you. You are the silent architect. This is a loud move. It is aggressive. Are you sure?" "I am sure," I said. "And Marcus, make sure the pull quote about family is highlighted in the social media assets. The one where you say, I built this because the people who were supposed to believe in me thought I was a failure? That is the one, I said. Magnet. I hung up before he could ask why. I did not need him to understand the why. I only needed him to execute the how. Next, I dialed Julian, my personal counsel and the lead corporate attorney for Meridian Aegis. He was in New York, so it was an hour later for him, but Julian billed $800 an hour and never slept. Claire, he answered, please tell me the SEC did not send a letter on Christmas week. No regulatory issues, Julian, I said. I need a package prepared. I need certified copies of the capitalization table showing my 51% ownership. I need the latest independent valuation report from Deloitte. I need the patent filings with my name listed as the primary inventor. And I need the deed to the penthouse in Austin and the title for the yacht I keep in Miami. The yacht you never use? Julian asked. Why do you need proof of assets? You know what you own. I know, I said, but others might try to rewrite history. I want a digital dossier, watermarked, notarized, and ready to send at a moment's notice. I have a feeling that by noon on Christmas Day, there will be questions about whether my money is real, or worse, if it somehow belongs to my father. Julian said, his voice dropping. The Palm Beach contingent. Exactly. Prepare the file. Call it the receipts folder if you want. Just have it ready. Consider it done, he said. My third call was the hardest. I opened my laptop and initiated a secure video conference with Raj and Sophie, my co-founders. They were the only two people on Earth who knew the full extent of the gap between my two lives. Raj was in London visiting his parents, and Sophie was in San Francisco. Their faces popped up on the screen, pixelated for a second before sharpening into high definition. Emergency meeting? Sophie asked, adjusting her glasses. She was wearing a hoodie that said, I speak Python. Not an emergency, I said, but a heads up. You know the Forbes piece comes out in 2 days. We are ready, Raj said, smiling. It is going to be brilliant. The valuation numbers are going to drive recruitment through the roof. There is going to be some noise, I warned them. Personal noise. My family. They do not know. They do not know about the company, the money, or the cover. They are going to find out at the same time as the rest of the world. Sophie stopped typing. Raj's smile faded. You never told them? Sophie asked softly. Claire, you said you were keeping it low profile. You did not say it was a total blackout. They think I work in IT support, I said, and tonight my mother uninvited me from Christmas dinner because she thinks I am too poor and embarrassing to be seen with her rich friends. Raj let out a low whistle. That is brutal. It is freeing, I corrected him. But I need you to know that the media might latch onto the family angle. Billionaire daughter snubbed by socialite parents. It might get tabloidy for a news cycle or two. I do not want it to distract from the work. But I cannot control the narrative once the dam breaks. Claire, Sophie said, leaning into her camera. We built this company together. We know who you are. If your family wants to play the villains in their own story, let them. But just remember one thing. What? I asked. Once that cover drops, you cannot put the genie back in the bottle, Sophie said seriously. You lose the anonymity. You lose the ability to walk into a room and be invisible. You are trading your privacy for their humiliation. Is it worth it? I thought about the empty seat at the table in Palm Beach. I thought about Tessa's smirk. I thought of my father's dismissive wave. It is not about their humiliation, I said. It is about my vindication. And yes, it is worth it. Then we are with you, Raj said. Burn it down, Claire. After closing the laptop, I realized I had one final logistical hurdle. If I was going to stay in Austin for Christmas, I was not going to sit in my apartment eating takeout. I needed to be seen. I needed to be visible in a way that contradicted everything my mother had said about me. I checked the local events calendar. The Tech for Tomorrow Gala was happening on Christmas Eve at the Driskill Hotel. It was a high-ticket fundraiser, the kind where senators and venture capitalists rubbed shoulders. Usually, I avoided these events. I preferred to write checks anonymously. Tonight, I bought a VIP table for 10, just for myself. The next morning, the day before Christmas Eve, I did something I had not done in 5 years. I went to the Domain Northside, the luxury shopping district of Austin, and I walked into the most expensive boutique on the block. Usually, I shopped online or wore the same rotation of high-quality basics. Today, I wanted armor. The sales associate looked me up and down. I was wearing running shoes and a hoodie. "Can I help you find something specific? The sale rack is in the back." I looked at her. "I am not looking for the sale rack. I need a gown for the Driscoll Gala tomorrow night, and I need it to look like I own the building." 2 hours later, I walked out with a garment bag containing a dress that cost $8,000. It was a structural masterpiece of black velvet and silver thread, elegant but imposing. I bought shoes that added 4 inches to my height. I bought diamond studs that were simple but caught the light with a blinding intensity. I was not dressing for a party. I was dressing for war. I returned to my apartment as the sun was setting. The hours were ticking down. I drafted a short statement on my phone, saving it to my notes. It was not for the press. It was for me, a reminder of why I was doing this. I respected your privacy when I thought you respected my personhood, but you cannot shame someone who is no longer afraid of the truth. At 10 o'clock on Christmas Eve, I stood in front of the full-length mirror in my bedroom. The woman looking back at me was unrecognizable to the Hartwell family. She was tall, regal, and terrifyingly composed. I took a selfie, just one, and saved it. I would not post it yet. I walked over to my phone lying on the nightstand. I went into the settings. I turned off notifications for Instagram, LinkedIn, and email. Then, I went to my contact list. I found Mom, Dad, Carter, and Elena. I did not block them. That would be too easy. I wanted them to be able to call. I wanted them to be able to ring and ring and ring. I set the phone to Do Not Disturb with no exceptions. "Scream all you want," I whispered to the silent device. "Tomorrow, I am not listening." I poured myself a glass of water, sat by the window, and watched the lights of the city. In Palm Beach, they were probably sitting down to their rehearsal dinner right now, laughing, drinking champagne, and feeling relieved that the embarrassingly poor sister had stayed away. They were toasting to their perfect image. They had no idea that the printing presses were already rolling, stamping my name in gold ink, preparing to shatter their glass house into 1,000,000 pieces. I took a sip of water and waited for morning. The silence in my apartment on December 24th was not empty. It was heavy. It had a texture, like velvet, thick and suffocating. I had spent the last 48 hours operating at the speed of a high-frequency trading algorithm, making calls, signing documents, and preparing for war. But now, the logistics were done. The lawyers were asleep. The press releases were queued. The world had stopped, and I was left alone with the echo of my mother's voice telling me I was not welcome. I stood in my kitchen, the granite countertops cold under my palms, in Palm Beach. Right now, the scene would be a sensory overload. I knew the script by heart. My mother would have hired a string quartet to play in the foyer. The air would smell of expensive pine candles and roasted duck. The crystal glasses would be clinking, a symphony of wealth and self-congratulation. Tessa would be holding court, her ring catching the light, while Graham's parents nodded approvingly at the pedigree of the wine. Here, in Austin, the air smelled of rain and takeout. I decided to make dinner. It felt like a ridiculous task for a woman whose net worth was about to be public knowledge in less than 12 hours. But hunger is a biological reality that does not care about stock options. I boiled water for pasta. Simple, uncomplicated. As I reached into the cabinet to grab a bowl, my hand automatically reached for a second one. I froze. It was a muscle memory from a life I did not actually have. Or perhaps it was a phantom limb sensation. The instinctive desire to feed someone else, to share a meal, to be part of a unit. I held the second bowl in my hand for a long moment. It was white ceramic, perfectly round, utterly useless. I looked at the empty seat across from me at the small dining table. There was no one coming. There was no boyfriend, no friend. and certainly no family member driving up the driveway to surprise me. I placed the second bowl back on the shelf and closed the cabinet door. The click of the latch sounded like a gunshot in the quiet room. I ate standing up at the counter. The pasta was hot, but I barely tasted it. I was feeding a machine, not enjoying a meal. After I washed the single dish, I moved to the living room. I did not turn on the main lights. I liked the shadows. They felt safer than the scrutiny I knew was coming. I sat on the beige sofa and turned on the television, scrolling through the streaming services until I found an old black and white film. I did not care about the plot. I just wanted the noise. I wanted the illusion of conversation filling the space so I did not have to listen to my own thoughts. My phone sat on the coffee table, screen down. Every year for the past decade, my phone would have buzzed by now. Usually, it was a group chat message from my sister, Elena, complaining about how much wine our aunt had drunk, or a passive-aggressive text from my mother reminding me to iron my dress for tomorrow. Even when they were critical, they were present. Tonight, the phone was a stone. I picked it up and checked the time. It was 8:30 in the evening. In Florida, it was 9:30. Dinner was over. They were moving to the drawing room for coffee and brandy. I opened my messaging app. The last message from my mother was from 2 weeks ago. Please do not make this difficult. There was no Merry Christmas Eve. There was no thinking of you. There was no we miss you. The silence was absolute. It was a tactical removal. They had not just uninvited me, they had erased me. To send a text would be to acknowledge my existence, and tonight, for the sake of the Wexler family merger. Claire Hartwell did not exist. I was a glitch in their programming that they had successfully patched out. I put the phone down and pulled my legs up onto the couch. Wrapping a blanket around my shoulders, I watched the actors on the screen mouth words I could not focus on. You are too embarrassing. The phrase looped in my head. I dissected it with the same clinical precision I used to analyze code. What made me embarrassing? Was it my lack of a husband? My refusal to wear makeup that took an hour to apply? My job? No, it was simpler than that. I was embarrassing because I was a mirror. When they looked at me, they saw the things they were afraid of: uncertainty, risk, and the possibility that status was not enough. I was embarrassing because I did not need them. My brother needed my father's connections to make partner. My sister needed the family trust to maintain her lifestyle. I needed nothing. And there is nothing more terrifying to a controlling family than a child who cannot be bought or threatened. I felt a sudden urge to document this feeling. I needed to capture the texture of this hurt before it turned into the cold armor of tomorrow. I reached for the leather-bound notebook I kept on the side table. I uncapped a pen and wrote the date, December 24th. I wrote, if they only love me when I make them proud in front of strangers, then it is not love, it is marketing. I have spent 32 years trying to be a product they would want to display on their shelf. Tomorrow, I am taking myself off the market. I looked at the words. The ink glistened slightly before drying. It felt final. I closed the book and stood up. The apartment felt too small, or maybe I felt too big for it. I walked to the window and looked out at the Austin skyline. The city was quiet. A few windows in the building across from me were lit up with colorful blinking lights. I could see silhouettes of people moving inside, families opening early gifts, couples toasting. I was not jealous. Curiously, I felt a sense of calm. I was alone, yes, but I was also free. For the first time in my life, I was not dreading the morning. I was not worrying about whether my dress was appropriate or if I would spill wine on the white carpet. I was not rehearsing safe topics of conversation to avoid triggering my father's temper. I went into my bedroom and opened my laptop. The screen glowed blue in the dark room. I had a countdown timer running in a browser tab. It was synced to the Forbes publishing server. 9 hours, 14 minutes, and 20 seconds. That was how much time was left of the old Claire, the Claire who drove a Honda, the Claire who nodded politely when her uncle explained how the internet worked, the Claire who was embarrassing. In 9 hours, that woman would die. In her place, a titan would rise. I imagined the moment the notification would hit my father's phone. He subscribed to the Forbes digital edition. He prided himself on reading the morning briefing before anyone else. He would be nursing a hangover from the expensive cognac. He would pick up his iPad, expecting to read about interest rates or oil prices. And he would see me. My stomach flipped, not with fear, but with a sharp, electric anticipation. I turned off the bedside lamp, plunging the room into darkness. I crawled under the duvet, the sheets cool against my skin. I closed my eyes, but sleep was miles away. My mind was racing, replaying the last 10 years, organizing them into a closing argument. I thought about the time my brother laughed when I told him I was learning to code. I thought about the time my mother told me to stand in the back of the photo because I was too tall in my heels. I thought about Tessa's smirk when she asked if I could afford to pitch in for a group gift. I let every memory wash over me. I did not push them away. I used them. I packed them into the fuel tank of my resolve. My phone buzzed once on the nightstand. My heart jumped. Had they remembered? Did someone sneak away to the bathroom to send a secret message of solidarity? I grabbed the phone. It was not family. It was Sophie, my co-founder. Just checking in. The message read, "The servers are primed for the traffic spike. Marketing is ready. How are you holding up?" I smiled in the dark. This was my real family. The people who knew my coffee order. The people who had seen me cry when we lost our first major contract and cheered when we signed the Pentagon. I typed back, "I am fine. It is quiet here." I paused, watching the cursor blink. Then I added, "If the storm hits tomorrow, Sophie, we just stick to the truth. No spin, no drama. The numbers are real. The success is real. That is all that matters." She replied instantly with a thumbs-up emoji. "Sleep well, boss. Tomorrow we conquer." I put the phone down. I rolled onto my back and stared at the ceiling fan, counting the blades. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. I was not going to skip Christmas. I was just celebrating it on my own terms. My mother had wanted a perfect day. I was going to give her one. I was going to give her the most memorable Christmas of her life. I closed my eyes and listened to the hum of the city outside. I breathed in deeply, filling my lungs with the cool air of the apartment that I owned, paid for with money I had earned, living a life I had built. Let them have their dinner. Let them have their toasts. I had the morning, and the morning was coming fast. At 6 o'clock in the morning, the embargo lifted. At 6:02, my phone did not just ring, it convulsed. I was already awake, sitting on the edge of my bed with a cup of black coffee, watching the device as if it were a grenade I had just pulled the pin from. The screen lit up, and then it never went dark again. It was a continuous cascade of light and vibration, a digital avalanche crashing into the quiet sanctuary of my Austin apartment. I picked it up. The notifications were scrolling so fast they were unreadable. LinkedIn had 99+ notifications in the first 3 minutes. My email inbox, which I kept meticulously at 0, was refilling by the second. Subject lines flashed by. Interview request. Good morning, America. CNN Business. Investment inquiry. Congratulations. Shocked. Is this true? I navigated away from the chaos of my personal inbox and opened the browser. I needed to see it. I needed to see the weapon I had fired. There it was, Forbes.com. The homepage had been taken over. The banner was a deep, authoritative navy blue, and in the center stood the photograph. It was the one I had taken in the office, but seeing it now, processed and polished, it looked different. I looked like a titan. My arms were crossed. My chin tilted slightly upward, and my eyes held a frightening amount of clarity. I did not look like the unstable daughter. I looked like the person who owned the building. The headline screamed in bold, white serif font, "The Uninvited Billionaire." And below it, the subhead that Marcus, my publicist, had fought to keep, but I had insisted upon. Claire Hartwell built the $4 billion fortress of Meridian Aegis in secret. Her family's response? They asked her to skip Christmas dinner to save them the embarrassment. I tapped the article. The page loaded instantly. The journalist had done exactly what I hoped. She had not buried the lead. The first paragraph was a masterclass in contrast. It described the sheer scale of Meridian Aegis, the government contracts, the proprietary AI security protocols that were currently protecting half of the Fortune 500. It listed the valuation, $4.2 billion. It listed my stake, 51%. Then, the article pivoted. I read the paragraph that I knew would change my life forever. Success usually brings families together, Hartwell says, sitting in a boardroom that costs more than her parents' country club membership. But for me, silence was a survival strategy. My family values optics over substance. 2 weeks ago, my mother called to uninvite me from Christmas dinner because my job was too vague and my lifestyle too modest for the guests they wanted to impress. They told me I was embarrassing. So, I decided to stop being embarrassing. I decided to be honest. I refreshed the page. The share count had jumped from 2,000 to 15,000 in the time it took me to read one paragraph. I switched to Twitter. It was trending. The hashtag #TheUninvited was already climbing the charts, sandwiched between holiday greetings and sports scores. People were screenshotting the quote. They were making memes. One user had posted a picture of a generic rich family looking horrified with the caption, "When you kick out the spare air and realized you kicked out the bank." Another had posted a clip of me from the article with the caption, "The level of petty I aspire to be, Queen." It was happening. The narrative was slipping out of the Hartwell family's manicured hands and into the wild, uncontrollable current of the internet. They were no longer the gatekeepers of status. They were the punchline. My phone started vibrating with a different intensity. A call. The screen flashed. Dad. I stared at it. The phone buzzed against the marble coaster. A harsh, angry sound. I declined the call. 2 seconds later, Mom. I declined. Carter. I declined. Elena. I declined. They were moving in a pack, just like they always did. The coordination was impressive. They must have been sitting around the breakfast table in Palm Beach, tablets in hand, choking on their mimosas. I could imagine the panic. I could imagine my father's face turning that shade of crimson he got when a waiter brought the wrong wine, only magnified by $1 billion. They weren't calling to congratulate me. They were calling to contain the damage. I stood up. I needed to move. The adrenaline was making my hands shake. Not from fear, but from a surplus of energy that had nowhere to go. I could not sit in this apartment and watch the numbers climb. I needed to feel the ground under my feet. I changed into my running gear, black leggings, a thermal shirt, and my running shoes. I tied my hair back tight. I grabbed my phone, not to answer it, but to use it as a music player. I put my earbuds in, turning the volume up until the electronic beat drowned out the phantom sound of my mother's voice. I walked out of my building and hit the pavement. The air in Austin was crisp and cold, biting at my exposed skin. It was 6:30 in the morning on Christmas Day. The streets were mostly empty. A few cars drifted by, likely people heading to early church services or shifts at the hospital. They had no idea that the woman jogging past them had just detonated a nuclear device in the world of high society finance. I ran toward Lady Bird Lake. My feet pounded the concrete in a steady rhythm. 1, 2, 1, 2. With every step, I felt lighter. My phone interrupted the music every 30 seconds with a notification of a missed call. I did not look at the names. I knew who they were. I knew that right now. My brother Carter was probably screaming at his own publicist, trying to figure out how to distance himself or how to spin this. I knew my mother was likely weeping, not because she had hurt me, but because the Wexlers would have seen the article. Graham Wexler. I wondered if he was awake. I wondered if he was reading about how his future in-laws treated the embarrassing sister. I ran faster. The wind whipped against my face, tearing water from my eyes. I was reclaiming my body. For years, I had made myself small to fit into their frame. I had hunched my shoulders. I had spoken softly. I had dressed down. Now, I was expanding. I was taking up space. I was running a 6-minute mile. And I owned 51% of a company that protected the Pentagon. I ran for an hour. By the time I looped back toward downtown, the sun was fully up, casting long, golden shadows across the water. I slowed to a walk, gasping for air, sweat cooling on my forehead. I felt cleansed. I pulled my phone out to check the time. 7:45. 72 missed calls, 46 voicemails, 112 text messages. I opened the text thread from my mother. It was a wall of blue bubbles, growing increasingly desperate. Claire, answer the phone. This is ridiculous. The article is a lie. Why would you say that? We were protecting you. People are calling us. The Wexlers are asking questions. Pick up. And then, the most recent one, sent 3 minutes ago. Call immediately. This is a misunderstanding. We can fix this press release together. I stopped on the sidewalk, right in front of my building. I stared at the words. Misunderstanding. It was their favorite word. It was the word they used to cover up cruelty. It was a misunderstanding when they forgot my birthday. It was a misunderstanding when they left me off the family vacation list. I looked up at the sky. No, I said aloud. This is not a misunderstanding. This is a consequence. I did not reply. I walked into the lobby of my building. The concierge, a young man named David who usually just nodded at me, looked up. His eyes went wide. He was holding a tablet. I saw the Forbes logo on the screen. Ms. Hartwell, he stammered. Merry Christmas. Merry Christmas, David, I said, giving him a genuine smile. It is a beautiful morning, isn't it? Yes, ma'am, he said, looking at me with a new kind of reverence. It was the look people gave to power. I hated it and loved it at the same time. I took the elevator up to the penthouse. The silence of the apartment greeted me again, but now it felt different. It felt victorious. I went to the kitchen and poured a large glass of water. I stood by the window, looking down at the street. My heart rate was finally slowing down to its resting pace. I was ready to shower, put on the velvet dress I had bought, and face the day. Then, the buzzer rang. It was the video intercom for the building's front entrance. I frowned. I was not expecting anyone. Maybe a delivery? But who delivered at 8 a.m. on Christmas? I walked over to the panel on the wall and pressed the button to activate the camera. The screen flickered to life, showing a wide-angle view of the street entrance below. My glass of water slipped from my hand. It shattered on the floor, shards of crystal exploding across the hardwood. I did not move to clean it up. I could not move. Standing on the sidewalk, huddled together like refugees from a glamorous shipwreck, was the Hartwell family. My father was wearing a tuxedo, his bow tie undone, his face gray with exhaustion. My mother was in a floor-length emerald sequined gown, wrapping a fur stole around herself as if she were freezing to death in the mild Texas winter. Carter was in a dinner jacket, looking frantically at his phone. Elena was wearing a red silk dress, clutching a designer clutch bag with both hands. They were not dressed for a morning flight. They were dressed for the dinner they had uninvited me from. They must have boarded a private jet the second the news broke. They must have flown straight from Palm Beach to Austin, still wearing their costumes, desperate to get to me before the rest of the world could fully digest the narrative. They looked ridiculous. They looked like actors who had wandered off the set of a period drama and ended up on a gritty city street. Passers-by were staring at them. Someone was taking a photo. My mother looked up at the camera. Though she could not see me, she looked old. The makeup was settling into the lines of her face. She reached out and pressed the buzzer again. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Claire, I heard her voice through the tiny speaker, tinny and distorted. We know you are up there. Let us in. I stepped back from the screen. The image of them, rich, desperate, and terrified, burned into my retinas. They had come to silence me. They had come to fix the misunderstanding. They had come to claim the daughter they suddenly realized was the most valuable asset in their portfolio. I looked at the shattered glass on the floor. Let them wait, I whispered. I turned away from the intercom. I walked into my bedroom and closed the door. I had a shower to take. I had a dress to put on. I had a life to live. and for the first time in 32 years, they were the ones standing on the outside, looking in. I let them wait for 10 minutes. I used that time to put on the black velvet dress I had bought the day before. It zipped up the back with a soft hiss, hugging my frame like armor. I put on the diamond studs. I applied a layer of crimson lipstick, precise and sharp. When I finally walked to the foyer and unlocked the door, I did not look like the daughter who fixed their Wi-Fi. I looked like the CEO who decided whether or not to acquire their companies. I opened the door. They spilled into the hallway like oil rushing to fill a vacuum. My mother, Marjorie, was the first one across the threshold. Her eyes were red-rimmed, her makeup smudged from what I assumed was a combination of crying and the dry air of a private jet cabin. She smelled of stale Chanel No. 5 and panic. "Claire!" she cried out, her voice cracking. She lunged toward me, her arms wide open, aiming for the kind of embrace she usually reserved for photographers at charity balls. It was a reflex. She wanted to pull me in, to physically reclaim me as part of the clan. I did not yell. I did not flinch. I simply took one step back. It was a small movement, covering no more than 12 inches of floor space, but the effect was cataclysmic. My mother froze mid-lunge. Her arms hovered in the empty air between us. The rejection was physical, absolute, and undeniable. Behind her, my father, Richard, stopped dead. Carter and Elena bumped into each other in the doorway, their momentum arrested by the sudden wall of ice I had erected. "Do not," I said. My voice was not loud, but it carried through the high ceilings of the penthouse. "Do not touch me." My mother lowered her arms slowly, looking at me as if I had slapped her. "Claire, darling, please, we were so worried. We saw the news, and we came straight here. We didn't even go home to change." "I can see that," I said, my gaze sweeping over their wrinkled evening wear. "You look like you had a rough night. I suppose the party didn't go as planned." "The party?" My father stepped forward. He bypassed the emotional pleasantries entirely. His eyes were laser-focused on me, or rather, on the woman he had just read about in Forbes. He looked like a wolf trying to decide if the creature in front of him was prey or a predator. "Forget the party, Claire. Is it true?" "Is what true, Richard?" I asked, dropping the title Dad. "The valuation," he snapped, his voice tight. "The article said $4.2 billion. It said you own 51%. That is an astronomical number. Is it accurate? Did the journalists verify the cap table?" He did not ask, "How are you?" He did not ask, "Why didn't you tell us?" He asked about the math. "It is accurate," I said calmly. "Actually, the article is slightly outdated. Since the market opened this morning, the valuation has likely adjusted upward based on the public interest. So, yes, it is real." The air left the room. My father gripped the back of one of my dining chairs, his knuckles white. I watched him do the mental arithmetic. He was calculating what 51% of $4 billion looked like. He was realizing that his failure of a daughter could buy and sell his entire firm before breakfast. Carter, my brother, let out a nervous, breathless laugh. He stepped around my father, his face rearranging itself into a mask of camaraderie. "I knew it," he said, shaking his head with a feigned sense of wonder. "I told everyone, didn't I? I said, Claire is up to something big. I always said you were the dark horse of the family. God, Claire, this is incredible. We are so proud of you." I looked at him. I remembered the last time I saw him. He had handed me his empty scotch glass without looking at me, assuming I would take it to the kitchen because the housekeeper was busy. "Proud?" I repeated. 2 weeks ago, you told me my career was cute. You asked if I was still playing with computers. You laughed when I said I was busy." Carter's smile faltered. "That was just banter. You know how we are. We tease. It is what families do." "No," I said. "Families support, bullies tease, and you are a bully. Carter, you just happen to be a bully in a $3,000 suit." Elena, who had been standing quietly by the door, let out a sob. She pressed a tissue to her eyes. Claire, stop. Please. This is horrible. We didn't know. How could we know? You never said anything. I feel so guilty that I didn't know that you were doing so well. You didn't know? I walked over to the kitchen island and picked up my tablet. I unlocked it and tapped the screen a few times, projecting the image onto the large television mounted on the wall. It was a screenshot of a text conversation from 3 years ago. Read it, I said. Elena squinted at the screen. It was a message I had sent to our family group chat. Guys, big news. My company just secured a major contract with the Department of Defense. It is a huge milestone for us. Below it were the replies. Carter. That's nice. Claire. Hey, Mom. What time is the tennis match on Sunday? Elena. Did anyone see where I left my sunglasses? Mom. Claire, please don't talk politics in the chat. I swiped to the next image, a photo from Thanksgiving. I was sitting at the far end of the table, cut off by a large floral centerpiece. I was mid-sentence, mouth open, trying to speak. Everyone else was looking at Graham, who was showing them a picture of his boat. I tried to tell you, I said, my voice dropping an octave. I tried to tell you about the Series A funding. I tried to tell you when we hit 100 employees. I tried to tell you when we opened the London office. Every single time, I was interrupted. I was talked over. I was ignored. You didn't know because you didn't care to listen. To you, I was background noise. Elena looked down at her shoes. We thought you were struggling. We didn't want to embarrass you by asking about a job that wasn't going anywhere. And there it is, I said. You assumed I was a failure because I didn't follow your script. You assumed I was poor because I didn't flash money, and because you thought I was beneath you, you treated me like I wasn't there. My mother finally found her voice. She stepped forward again, her face twisting into a grimace of righteous indignation. She was not used to losing control of a room, and she was trying to wrestle the narrative back into a shape she recognized. This is not fair. Claire, she said, her voice trembling with anger. You deceived us. You let us believe you were living paycheck to paycheck. You drove those awful rental cars. You wore those plain clothes. It was a lie. You were testing us? Is that it? You were playing some cruel game with your own family? I was living my life, I countered. I drove rental cars because I travel constantly and it is efficient. I wear simple clothes because I have better things to do than coordinate outfits for a brunch. I didn't hide the money. I just didn't lead with it. And because I didn't lead with it, you decided I had no value. It is still dishonest, she cried out. If you had just told us— If I had told you what? I cut her off. If I had told you I was a billionaire, would you have invited me to Christmas? Would you have put me at the head of the table? Of course we would have, she blurted out. The silence that followed was heavy and absolute. Even Carter flinched. My mother's hand flew to her mouth, realizing too late what she had just admitted. I let out a short, cold laugh. It sounded like glass breaking. Thank you, I said. Thank you for finally being honest. You would have invited the money. You would have invited the status. You would have invited the Forbes cover girl. But you wouldn't have invited me. You wouldn't have invited your daughter. My mother looked pale. That is not what I meant. I meant we would have celebrated you. We would have been so proud. You are apologizing for the wrong thing. Mother, I said, shaking my head. You are not sorry you treated me like garbage. You are sorry you didn't realize I was expensive garbage. You are sorry you threw away a winning lottery ticket because you thought it was a receipt. My father moved toward me, trying to salvage the situation with logic. Claire, listen, we made mistakes. We admit that. We were hard on you because we wanted you to succeed. We pushed you. Maybe we pushed too hard, but we are family, the Hartwell name, this company. We need to discuss how to manage this. The press is going to be vicious. You need representation. You need to align your assets with the family trust for protection. I looked at him with genuine pity. He still thought he had leverage. He still thought he was the patriarch. My assets are protected, I said. My lawyers have been preparing for this for weeks, and as for the Hartwell name, I don't use it professionally. The company is mine. The shares are mine. The decisions are mine. There is no we here. Richard. You can't do this alone, he insisted. The Wexlers. They are going to. The Wexlers are the least of your problems, I said. And frankly, they are the least of mine. I walked to the front door and pulled it open. The hallway light spilled in, harsh and bright. I think it is time for you to leave, I said. Claire, no, Elena pleaded, stepping toward me. It is Christmas morning. We can't leave like this. Let's just sit down. Let's order breakfast. Please, we can fix this. There is nothing to fix, I said. The bridge isn't broken. Elena, I burned it, and I'm quite happy with the view from this side. My mother looked at me, tears finally streaming down her face, ruining the last of her mascara. We love you, Claire. You have to believe that. I looked at her, searching for any sign of the mother I had wanted when I was a child. I saw fear. I saw regret. But I did not see love. I saw a woman realizing she had lost her most valuable accessory. I think you love the idea of having a successful family, I said softly. But you don't know me well enough to love me, and that is okay. I have made peace with it. I gestured to the open door. Go, I said. Go back to Palm Beach. Go have your perfect dinner with the Wexlers. Tell them I said hello. Tell them I was too busy counting my money to attend. My father stared at me for a long moment, his jaw working. Then, he turned and walked out. He didn't look back. Carter followed, casting one longing glance at the penthouse interior before ducking his head. Elena was sobbing openly now, but she followed the men. My mother was the last to leave. She stood in the doorway, looking small and defeated in her ruined gown. You are cruel, she whispered. I am a mirror, Mother, I said. If you don't like what you see, stop looking. I closed the door. I didn't slam it. I shut it firmly, with a definitive click of the lock. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door for a second. Breathing in the silence, it was over. The confrontation I had dreaded and fantasized about for years had happened. They had come to claim me, and I had sent them away empty-handed. I turned back to the empty living room. The glass I had dropped earlier was still shattered on the floor, sparkling in the morning sun. Happy Christmas, I whispered to the empty room. I walked over to the kitchen, picked up a broom, and began to sweep away the broken pieces. I had a dinner to prepare. I had a company to run, and for the first time in my life, I had absolutely nothing to prove to anyone. By noon on Christmas Day, the digital wildfire I had sparked had jumped the firebreak and was consuming the entire forest of social media. I sat on my living room sofa, a cup of tea cooling on the table, watching the world dissect my life in real time. The internet, predictably, had divided into two viciously opposed camps. On one side were the pragmatists and the hustle culture devotees, who hailed me as a hero of boundaries. They were sharing the Forbes quote with captions like, "Energy for 2026, and tax the rich, but eat the toxic." On the other side were the traditionalists, the people who believed blood was a binding contract regardless of toxicity. They called me cold. They called me calculating. One op-ed in a major digital publication had already gone live with the headline, "Is public humiliation the new family therapy? Why Claire Hartwell went too far." I read it without flinching. They could call me whatever they wanted. They were still spelling my name right, and the stock valuation of Meridian Aegis had effectively received millions of dollars in free global marketing. But the silence from my family was unnerving. After I had closed the door on them 3 hours ago, they had vanished. No more buzzing intercoms, no more pounding on the door. I assumed they were on their jet, flying back to Florida in a haze of champagne and recriminations, trying to salvage their dignity before dinner. At 2:00 in the afternoon, my phone rang. I expected it to be my mother again, or perhaps Carter trying a different angle. I looked at the screen. It was an unknown number with a 561 area code. Palm Beach. My stomach tightened. It could be a reporter who had dug up my personal line. It could be one of my father's angry investors. I debated letting it go to voicemail, but curiosity is a dangerous thing. I swiped right. "This is Claire," I said, my voice guarded. "Claire? Hi, this is Graham. Graham Wexler." I froze. Of all the people I expected to hear from, the scion of the Wexler dynasty, the man whose very existence had been the justification for my exile, was last on the list. "Graham," I said. I sat up straighter, as if he could see me. "I assume you are calling to tell me I have ruined your Christmas." "No," he said quickly. His voice sounded different than I remembered. Usually, Graham spoke with a practiced, languid drawl, the voice of a man who had never rushed for anything in his life. Today, he sounded shaken. He sounded like a man who had just watched a car crash. "No, Claire, I am calling because I just read the article, and then I saw the video of your family outside your building on TMZ. "Ah," I said. "I didn't know the paparazzi were there." "They are everywhere now," Graham said. He took a jagged breath. "Claire, I need to know something, and I need you to be honest with me, even though I have no right to ask. Did your mother really tell you that you couldn't come today because of us? Because of the Wexlers?" "She was very specific. Graham," I said, keeping my tone dry. "She said your family values pedigree and perfection. She said I was unstable and embarrassing. She said my presence would make Tessa look bad in front of your parents and grandmother. She told me to stay away for the sake of the merger. Sorry, the marriage." There was a long silence on the other end of the line. I could hear background noise, the clinking of silverware, the murmur of voices. He had stepped away from the party to call me. "That is sick," he whispered. "It is what it is," I said. "I am sorry if it reflects poorly on you, but I wasn't going to lie for them anymore." "No, you don't understand," Graham interrupted, his voice rising in intensity. "Claire, my parents didn't ask for you to be excluded. My grandmother asked where you were 3 days ago. She wanted to know if the tall girl who likes books was coming because she wanted to talk to you about some biography she is reading. My parents don't care about your job. They don't care about your clothes. They just assumed you were busy." I felt a strange sensation in my chest, a shifting of gravity. "My mother said it was your family's requirement. She said the Wexlers are particular." "My family is snobbish." "Sure," Graham admitted with a bitter laugh. "We are old money dinosaurs, but we aren't monsters. Claire, we don't banish family members on Christmas. Do you know who told us you weren't coming?" "Who?" "Tessa's mother, your Aunt Catherine, and your mother, Marjorie." "And what did they say?" I asked, though I already dreaded the answer. "They told us you were having a mental health episode," Graham said, the words heavy with disgust. "They said you were in a facility in Austin and couldn't travel. My mother actually sent flowers to your apartment yesterday. Did you get them?" I looked at the empty coffee table. "No, I didn't get any flowers." "Because they probably sent them to the wrong address. Or maybe they never sent them at all," Graham said. "God, they lied to us. They lied to everyone. They painted you as this tragic, unstable charity case just so they wouldn't have to explain why you didn't fit their aesthetic." I closed my eyes. It was worse than I thought. It wasn't just that I was embarrassing. It was that they had pathologized me. They had invented a breakdown to excuse my absence, using my alleged instability as a social shield. "Why are you telling me this, Graham?" I asked quietly. "Because I am sitting here looking at Tessa," he said. "She is over there by the buffet, laughing with my cousins. She knows. She knew the whole time. She knew her mother and your mother concocted this lie, and she went along with it. She let me believe her cousin was in a psych ward when you were actually building a billion-dollar empire." "Tessa has always done what she is told," I said, not to defend her, but to explain the mechanics of my family. "She is a product of the system, Graham, just like I was supposed to be." "That is not an excuse," Graham said sharply. "It is cruelty, pure, unadulterated cruelty, and arrogance. They used my family's name as a weapon to hurt you. They made us the villains in your story so they could feel superior." "Well," I said, "the story is out now." "Yes, it is," Graham said, and I am done playing my part in it. What are you going to do? I am going to walk back into that dining room, Graham said, his voice stealing. And I am going to ask Tessa, in front of everyone, if she knew that you were uninvited because you were embarrassing. I am going to ask her to read the Forbes article out loud. Graham, I said, feeling a sudden surge of alarm. You don't have to do that. The point has been made. No, Claire, the point has been made to the public, but it hasn't been made to her, Graham replied. I was going to propose a toast today. I was going to announce the wedding date, but I'm looking at her now, and all I see is someone who was willing to erase her own flesh and blood for a seating chart. If she can do that to you, what will she do to me if I lose money? What will she do to our children if they aren't perfect? You are going to call off the engagement? I asked. The shock of it was almost physical. I had intended to expose my parents. Yes, I had intended to shame them, but I had not calculated that my revelation would dismantle Tessa's life in the process. I am postponing it, Graham said, indefinitely, until she can grow a conscience. I am not marrying a woman who needs a PR crisis to learn basic human decency. Graham, wait. I am sorry, Claire, he said. I am sorry on behalf of the Wexlers. We were the excuse, but we never wanted to be the executioners. You deserved better. Congratulations on the company. Really, it is extraordinary. The line went dead. I sat there, holding the phone, listening to the silence of my apartment. I had expected many things today. I had expected rage. I had expected vindication. I had not expected to be the catalyst for the implosion of a marriage that hadn't even started. I felt a complicated mix of emotions, guilt, a little, but mostly, a strange sense of clarity. Graham was right. It wasn't just about me. It was about character. My family had revealed theirs, and in doing so, they had shown Graham exactly who they were. 20 minutes later, the second wave hit. This time, the phone didn't ring. It vibrated with a text, then another, then another. I looked at the screen. It was Aunt Catherine, Tessa's mother. You monster. Then my mother. What did you say to him? Graham just left. He walked out in the middle of appetizers. He took his parents. Tessa is hysterical. Then Elena. You happy now? You didn't just ruin Christmas. You destroyed Tessa's life. She is hyperventilating in the bathroom. Graham called off the engagement. How could you be so selfish? Then a voicemail from my father. I didn't listen to it, but the transcription popped up on my screen. Claire, you have crossed a line. Business is one thing, family is another. You have poisoned the well. Fix this. Call Graham and tell him you lied. Tell him it was a joke. Fix this now. They were panicked. The narrative had shifted from Claire is embarrassing to Claire is a homewrecker. They weren't reflecting on their lies. They weren't thinking about the mental health facility story Graham had told me about. They were only thinking about the loss of the Wexler connection. They were mourning the proximity to power, not the pain they had caused. I imagined the scene in Palm Beach, the crying, the shouting, the half-eaten shrimp cocktails, the empty chairs where the Wexlers had been. It was a disaster of biblical proportions, a social red wedding. And they wanted me to fix it. They wanted me to call Graham and lie. They wanted me to say, "Oh, sorry. I made it all up. I am actually crazy. Please marry my cousin." They wanted me to fall on my sword so they could keep eating cake. I looked at the flood of messages. They were venomous. They were desperate. They were the thrashing of people who had lived their entire lives believing that consequences were for other people, for poor people, for unconnected people. They had never experienced the sudden, brutal stop of a reality check. I could have argued. I could have screenshotted Graham's call log and sent it to them. I could have told them exactly what Graham said about the mental health lie. But that would be engaging. That would be playing their game. I decided to end it. I opened the group chat, the one I had been excluded from for months, which Elena had apparently added me back to just to scream at me. I typed one sentence. The future was ruined by your arrogance, not my truth. I hit send. Then, I did something I should have done years ago. I tapped the top of the screen, scrolled down to the bottom of the group settings, and hit Leave Conversation. I went to my contacts. I selected Mom, block caller. I selected Dad, block caller. Carter, block caller. Elena, block caller. Aunt Catherine, block caller. Tessa, block caller. The phone went quiet. I stood up and walked to the window. The sun was beginning to dip lower in the sky, casting long purple shadows across Austin. The day was almost over. I had woken up an outcast. I was going to sleep a villain in their eyes and a legend in everyone else's. But for the first time, I didn't care about the label. I wasn't the embarrassing daughter anymore. I wasn't even the vindictive billionaire. I was just Claire, and for the first time in 32 years, the silence in my head was peaceful. I went to the kitchen and opened the refrigerator. I had a steak I needed to cook, and after the day I had just had, I was going to enjoy every single bite. The fallout from the morning was radioactive, but radiation, if managed correctly, can be a power source. By 4 p.m. on Christmas Day, the media narrative had shifted from shock to investigation. Journalists were no longer just sharing the Forbes cover. They were digging. They were looking for the cracks in the Hartwell family veneer, and they were finding them. There were reports surfacing about my father's firm's recent lackluster performance, and gossip columns were already speculating on the implosion of the Wexler-Langford engagement. I could have poured gasoline on the fire. I could have released the voicemails. I could have given an exclusive interview to CNN and detailed every birthday they missed and every insult they hurled. But I did not. That was what the old Claire would have done. The Claire who wanted to be heard. The new Claire, the woman who ran a multi-billion-dollar corporation, understood that silence was often louder than screaming. I called Marcus, my head of communications. Draft a statement, I told him. Keep it under 100 words. No emotion, no family drama. Pivot everything back to the company. 20 minutes later, the official statement from Meridian Aegis went live. It was clinically precise. Regarding recent personal inquiries, I stand by my comments in Forbes. My focus remains, as it has for the last 7 years, on the incredible team at Meridian Aegis and our mission to secure the world's data. We are proud of our growth and will continue to protect our clients with the same integrity we demand of ourselves. I ask that the privacy of my employees be respected during this time. It was a masterstroke of dismissal by refusing to engage in the mudslinging. I made my family look even more hysterical by comparison. I was working. They were weeping. That evening, I did not hide in my apartment. I had a schedule to keep. The Tech for Tomorrow Gala was an annual tradition in Austin, a black tie fundraiser held in the ballroom of the Driskill Hotel. Usually, I bought a ticket and didn't show up, or I sent a junior executive in my place. Tonight, I went. I walked into the lobby of the Driskill at 8 o'clock. The air smelled of expensive leather and holiday spices. The moment I stepped onto the marble floor, the atmosphere in the room shifted. It was a physical sensation, like the drop in pressure before a storm. Heads turned. Conversations stopped mid-sentence. I was wearing the black velvet dress I had purchased yesterday. It was severe and elegant, a silhouette that demanded attention without begging for it. I held my head high, my posture relaxed. A photographer near the entrance raised his camera. Flash, flash, flash. In the past, I would have flinched. I would have worried that my hair was frizzy or that I looked awkward. Tonight, I looked straight into the lens. I didn't smile. I didn't pose. I just existed, unapologetically. I walked into the ballroom. It was filled with the elite of the Texas tech world. Venture capitalists, startup founders, energy tycoons. These were people who measured worth in equity and innovation, not in last names and country club memberships. A man I recognized as the CEO of a major semiconductor firm approached me. He didn't ask about my mother. He didn't ask about the drama. "Claire," he said, extending a hand. "I saw the quarterly figures for Meridian. Impressive work on the government contract. I would love to pick your brain about your encryption protocols." "Thank you, David," I replied, shaking his hand firmly. "The encryption is proprietary, of course, but I'm happy to discuss the broader architecture. For the next 2 hours, I moved through the room. I was not the embarrassing sister. I was a peer. I was a competitor. I was a potential partner. The conversations were dense, fast-paced, and intellectually stimulating. We talked about market volatility, about artificial intelligence ethics, about the future of cybersecurity. I realized, with a sudden, startling clarity, that I was not alone. I had spent my life feeling isolated at my parents' dinner table, surrounded by people who shared my blood but not my soul. Here, surrounded by strangers, I felt a profound sense of kinship. These people understood the obsession, the late nights, the risk, and the sheer force of will it took to build something from nothing. This was my tribe. This was my real family. I stepped out onto the terrace to get some air. The night was cool. A woman was standing there, looking out at the city lights. She was in her late 60s, with silver hair cut in a sharp bob and a presence that radiated authority. I recognized her immediately. It was Evelyn Vance, a legend in the venture capital world. A woman who had broken glass ceilings when my mother was still choosing flower arrangements. "Quite a day you have had, Ms. Hartwell," Evelyn said without turning around. "It has been a long 24 hours, I admitted, stepping up beside her. Evelyn turned and looked at me. Her eyes were sharp, assessing. "I read the article, and I saw the circus outside your building. It takes a lot of courage to burn down the house you were born in." "I didn't burn it down," I said. "I just stopped propping it up." Evelyn smiled, a small, knowing expression. "I have seen a lot of founders in my time. Claire, many of them try to use their success to buy the love they didn't get as children. They think if they just make one more billion, if they just get one more cover story, their parents will finally look at them with respect." She paused, letting the words hang in the air. "It never works," she said softly. "Success is a wonderful thing. It gives you freedom. It gives you power. But it cannot save a relationship that is based on conditions. Money cannot buy respect from people who only value you for what you can do for them. If the affection wasn't there when you were poor, the affection you get now isn't love. It is tax evasion." I laughed, a genuine sound that surprised me. "Tax evasion. That is a good way to put it." "You are building a new life," Evelyn said, reaching out to pat my arm. "Build it with people who respect the architect, not just the building. You have a new family in this room. If you want us." "I think I do," I said. "Good," Evelyn said. "Now, go back inside. There are 3 investors asking for an introduction, and I told them they had to wait until you were done breathing." I went back inside, but Evelyn's words stayed with me. Build it with people who respect the architect. I left the gala at 11 o'clock. I didn't go home to sleep. I went to my office. The building was quiet, the only light coming from the server rooms and the cleaning crew on the lower floors. I sat at my desk, looking at the city. I was done with the emotional reaction. It was time for the strategic response. My family would come back. They always did. Once the shock wore off, once the embarrassment faded, they would try to find a way to attach themselves to Meridian Aegis. They would want board seats. They would want to host charity events in my name. They would want to reconcile so they could be photographed with the billionaire daughter. I needed to build a wall they couldn't climb. I called Julian, my lawyer. He answered on the first ring. "I am billing you double for Christmas," he joked, though he sounded awake. "Bill me triple," I said. "I have work for you." "Go ahead." "I want to establish a foundation," I said. "The Claire Hartwell Initiative. I want to endow it with $50 million of my personal stock to start. The focus will be STEM scholarships for underprivileged students, specifically those who, like me, were told they didn't fit the mold." "Done," Julian said. "Standard 501c3 structure?" "With one specific bylaw," I said. "I want a clause in the charter, a permanent, irrevocable clause. No member of the Hartwell family, specifically defined as my parents, my siblings, or their spouses, can ever sit on the board, hold an honorary title, or be employed by the foundation in any capacity. Furthermore, the foundation is prohibited from accepting donations from them if those donations come with any request for public recognition. Julian whistled low. That is specific. You are cutting them out of the glory. They love charity because it makes them look good, I said. I am not going to let them use my money to polish their image. If they want to help people, they can use their own checkbooks. This legacy is mine. I will draft it tonight, Julian said. Anything else? Yes, I said. Prepare a file. If any of them try to give interviews claiming they funded the company, or that they were silent partners, or that they supported me in the early days, I want immediate cease and desist orders ready. I have the receipts. Julian, I have the bank records showing I paid for everything myself. I have the emails where they refused to loan me money. If they try to rewrite history, I want to hit them with the truth so hard they won't be able to stand up. The nuclear option folder, Julian said. It is already on my desktop. We are ready. Good night, Julian. I hung up. I felt a sense of immense satisfaction. This wasn't revenge. Revenge was petty. Revenge was slashing tires or leaking secrets. This was design. I was designing a future where my boundaries were legally enforceable. I picked up my phone. I had blocked their numbers, but I checked my email. There was one new message in my personal inbox. It was from my mother. She must have realized her texts weren't going through. The subject line was simple. Christmas. I opened it. Claire, I know you are angry. I know we handled things poorly. The dinner was a disaster. Graham left, and the Wexlers are furious. But please, don't shut us out. We are your family. We still love you. We just want what is best for you. Please let us come see you. We can fix this. Love, Mom. I stared at the words. We still love you. It was the hook. It was the bait they had used for years. They dangled love in front of me like a carrot, pulling it away every time I didn't perform the way they wanted. They thought that if they said the word love, I would forget the humiliation. They thought love was a magic eraser that wiped away the fact that 12 hours ago, they stood on a sidewalk and realized they had bet on the wrong horse. I hovered my finger over the reply button. I could tell her that love doesn't humiliate. I could tell her that love doesn't hide you away. I could tell her that love doesn't wait until you are on the cover of Forbes to show up. But I realized that replying would be an act of hope. It would mean I still hoped she would understand, and I didn't. I wasn't angry anymore. I was just done. I closed the email without replying. I moved it to a folder I named Archive. I love me too, I whispered to the empty office. And that is going to have to be enough. I turned off the lights and walked out of the building. The city was asleep, but I was wide awake. The night was cold, but I didn't feel the chill. I felt the heat of a new day rising, a day that belonged entirely to me. The silence that followed the explosion of Christmas morning was not empty. It was filled with the heavy, grinding noise of a reality being reassembled. 3 weeks had passed since the article dropped. The initial media frenzy, the camera crews camped on the sidewalk, the paparazzi chasing my car, the endless notifications, had settled into a steady, low-frequency hum. The world had moved on to the next scandal, as the world always does. But in the private universe of the Hartwell family, the landscape had been permanently altered. I was back in my routine at Meridian Aegis. The difference was that now, when I walked into the building, the security guards stood a little straighter. My employees looked at me not just with respect, but with a kind of protective, fierce pride. I was no longer just their CEO, I was their vindication. On a rainy Tuesday morning in mid-January, my assistant placed a thick, cream-colored envelope on my desk. It had no return address, but I recognized the handwriting immediately. It was the sharp, angular script of my father. I let it sit there for 2 hours while I finished a budget meeting. I was not afraid of it, but I was wary. I expected a legal threat. I expected a demand for a retraction. When I finally opened it, I found 3 pages of stationery, covered in ink that looked like it had been pressed down hard into the paper. Claire, I have spent the last 20 days speaking to lawyers, publicists, and crisis managers. They all told me to issue a statement denying your claims. They told me to fight you. I fired them all. I am writing this not as a businessman, but as a father who realized, too late, that he ceased to be a father a long time ago, when I stood outside your building on Christmas morning. My first thought was not that I missed you. My first thought was not that I had hurt you. My first thought was how your net worth impacted my reputation. I did the math before I felt the shame. That realization has haunted me more than the press. I raised you in a world where value is calculated on a balance sheet, and I am ashamed to admit that I applied that same metric to my own children. I looked at you and saw a bad investment because you didn't yield the social dividends I wanted. I was wrong. You were never the investment. You were the child. I do not expect forgiveness. I do not expect a reply. I just wanted you to know that the silence from Palm Beach is not arrogance anymore. It is regret. Richard. I read the letter twice. Then I folded it and placed it in the top drawer of my desk. It was the first honest thing my father had ever said to me. It did not fix the past. It did not erase the years of neglect or the sting of being uninvited, but it was a start. It was an acknowledgement that the problem was not my embarrassing life, but his broken compass. A few days later, Carter came to Austin. He did not barge in. He did not call. He simply sat in the lobby of my building for 4 hours, waiting for me to come down. When I walked out of the elevator, I almost didn't recognize him. He was wearing a simple button-down shirt and slacks, stripped of the power suit that was his uniform. He looked tired. He looked smaller. "I am not here to ask for anything," he said, standing up as I approached. He kept his hands in his pockets, as if afraid to reach out. I wanted to say it to your face." "Say what, Carter?" I asked. I kept my distance, standing near the security desk. "That I was jealous," he said. The admission seemed to cost him something physical. He winced as the words came out. "All those years I made fun of your computer stuff, all those jokes about you fixing printers, it wasn't because I thought you were failing. It was because I was terrified you were smarter than me. And you were. I am a partner because Dad made a call. You are a CEO because you built it. I hated you for that." I looked at my brother. For 30 years, I had thought he despised me. It turned out he just despised himself. "Thank you for telling me," I said. My voice was even. Is there a chance we could get coffee?" he asked. "Just 5 minutes?" I looked at the rain falling against the glass doors. I felt a pang of sadness, but it was a distant feeling, like looking at an old photograph. "No, Carter," I said. "Not yet. An apology explains the wound, but it doesn't heal it. I need time, a lot of time." He nodded. He didn't argue. He walked out into the rain, and for the first time, I watched him leave without feeling like I was the one being left behind. The women in the family handled it differently. They sought to manage the emotions rather than the facts. Elena called me a week later. She sounded brisk, professional, using her doctor voice. "I have found a therapist," she announced. "He specializes in high-profile family estrangement. He is based in New York, but he does Zoom sessions. Mom and Dad agreed to go. Carter said he would try. We want you to join us on Thursday." I sat back in my chair, looking at the skyline of Austin. "Why, Elena?" "To heal," she said. "To move forward. To put this ugly chapter behind us and be a family again." "You want to feel better," I corrected her. "You want a referee to tell you that what you did wasn't that bad, or that my reaction was disproportionate, so you can sleep at night. You want to perform reconciliation the same way you perform Christmas." "That is not fair," she snapped. "We are trying." "I know you are," I said. "But here is the thing. Elena, I am not broken. I don't need fixing. I don't need to sit in a Zoom room and listen to Mom explain why she was protecting me. You can go to therapy. You should go. But I am not obligated to return to the scene of the crime just to help the perpetrators feel less guilty." "So that is it?" she asked, her voice trembling. You are just going to cut us off forever? I am going to live my life, I said, and you are going to live yours. If those lives intersect someday, it will be because I choose it, not because I was summoned to a group session. But the hardest conversation was the one I didn't want to have. Tessa called me late one night. She was drunk. I could hear the slur in her voice, the jagged edge of hysteria. You happy? She asked. You happy now, Claire? Go to sleep, Tessa, I said. He won't talk to me, she cried. Graham, he blocked me. He blocked my mom. He sent a courier to pick up the ring. A courier. He didn't even come himself. I am sorry, I said, and I meant it. I took no joy in her pain. You did this, she screamed. You couldn't just stay away. You couldn't just take the hit for one night. You had to make it a spectacle. You had to ruin my wedding. You were always jealous of me. You were jealous that I was getting the Wexler name and you were nobody. I let her scream. I let her pour all the poison she had been fed by our mothers into the phone. When she finally stopped to gasp for air, I spoke. Tessa, I said quietly, who uninvited me? What? She hiccuped. Who made the call? I asked. Who told Graham's family I was in a mental institution? Who decided that my presence was so offensive that it was worth lying to the man you love? It was for the wedding, she stammered. No, I said. It was for the image, and now you are seeing the image for what it is. Graham didn't leave you because of me. He left you because he saw you standing by while your family erased a human being. He saw his future in that mirror, and he ran. I didn't ruin your wedding. Tessa, you sacrificed it on the altar of your own vanity. The line went silent. I didn't hang up. I waited. I didn't know, she whispered. I didn't know it would end like this. We never do, I said. Until the bill comes due. I ended the call. In the public sphere, the Claire Hartwell story had morphed into something larger than me. It became a cultural touchstone. I saw articles dissecting the good daughter syndrome. I saw TikTok creators analyzing the dynamics of toxic family systems. I became a reluctant poster child for the meritocratic revenge. I received hundreds of requests for interviews. The View, 60 Minutes, Oprah. I turned them all down. I did not want to be a celebrity victim. I did not want to build a personal brand on the back of my family's humiliation. I wanted to be known for the code I wrote, for the company I built, for the scholarships I was funding. But the final test of my resolve came from an unexpected place. In early February, I received an official letter from the dean of the business school at the prestigious university where I had earned my undergraduate degree, the same university my father had attended, and his father before him. They wanted to honor me. They wanted to name me Alumna of the Year. They wanted me to give the keynote speech at the spring commencement. It was a tremendous honor. It was the kind of validation that 19-year-old Claire would have killed for. But then I read the second paragraph. In the spirit of unity and legacy, we would love to invite your parents, Richard and Marjorie Hartwell, to join you on stage for the award presentation. We believe it would be a powerful moment of reconciliation, a heartwarming story of a family coming together to celebrate success. It would be an inspiring message for our graduating class. I stared at the letter. They wanted the Hallmark movie ending. They wanted to sanitize the messiness of reality and package it into a palatable, feel-good moment. They wanted to use me to sell the idea that success fixes everything, that money heals all wounds, that if you just get rich enough, your parents will hug you and the credits will roll. It would be so easy to say yes. It would be the public redemption of the Hartwell family. My parents would get to smile and wave. I would look benevolent. The university would get a viral video. I picked up my pen. I didn't even call my lawyer for this one. I wrote the email myself. Dear Dean, thank you for the honor. I am flattered. However, I must decline. You are asking for a performance, not a speech. My story is not about reconciliation. It is about resilience. It is about the strength it takes to walk away from people who diminish you, even if they share your last name. To invite my parents on stage would be to lie to your students. It would tell them that the only way to be valid is to be accepted by the people who rejected you. That is not a lesson I am willing to teach. I do not act, I do not pretend, and I will not use my achievements to whitewash the behavior of others. If you want me, you get me, alone, standing on my own 2 feet. If that is not heartwarming enough for your ceremony, then I am not the speaker you are looking for. I hit send. I sat there in the quiet of my office, listening to the hum of the servers. I knew I had likely just thrown away a prestigious accolade. I knew my parents would hear about it and claim I was being stubborn. But for the first time in my life, the approval I felt didn't come from a letter, or a title, or a parent. It came from the quiet, steady beat of my own heart. I was real, and that was worth more than any stage they could build. The day Meridian Aegis went public was the kind of day that usually ends with champagne and confetti. It was mid-March in New York City. The sky was a piercing, cloudless blue, the air crisp and full of the electric energy that hummed through the streets of Manhattan. I was standing in a private suite overlooking Times Square, watching the giant digital billboard that now displayed my company's logo. In less than an hour, I would ring the opening bell at the NASDAQ, signaling the moment my life's work became a tradable entity worth billions. But before I could face the market, I had one final piece of unfinished business to transact. My family had reached out a week ago. They had not apologized again, nor had they yelled. They had simply proposed a truce. My father's assistant had contacted my team with a request. The Hartwell family wished to attend the IPO ceremony. They argued that optics matter, and that a united front would boost investor confidence. They suggested that leaving them out would look petty and distract from the business news. To everyone's surprise, including my own staff, I agreed to see them. I set the meeting for 8 in the morning, 45 minutes before the ceremony, in a conference room at the hotel. When I walked in, they were already there. They looked like a catalog for generational wealth. My father was in a bespoke charcoal suit. My mother wore a cream-colored dress that whispered of old money and forgiveness. Carter and Elena were there, too, looking suitably supportive. When I entered, the atmosphere shifted. They stood up. My mother took a half step forward. A tentative smile plastered on her face. "Claire," she said, her voice soft. "You look magnificent. That suit is perfect." "Thank you," I said. I did not sit down. I stood at the head of the mahogany table, my hands resting on the back of a leather chair. "You asked to be here. You said it was important for the family to be seen together." "It is," my father said, nodding gravely. "The press is going to be swarming. If we walk out there with you, stand behind you while you ring the bell. It sends a message of stability. It puts all those nasty rumors from Christmas to bed. We are ready to support you. Claire, we are ready to take our place by your side." "I see," I said. "And I assume you have already prepared statements? Just in case a reporter asks how proud you are?" Carter smiled, a little too quickly. "Of course. We want to make sure the narrative is positive. We want to help you shine." "That is very generous," I said. I reached into my leather portfolio and pulled out a thin stack of documents. I slid them across the polished table. There were 4 copies, one for each of them. "What is this?" Elena asked, looking down at the legal paperwork. "It is an agreement," I said calmly. "You said you wanted to be part of my life. You said you wanted to support me. I am willing to accept that support, provided we are all on the same page about what that relationship looks like." My father put on his reading glasses. I watched his eyes scan the first page. I saw the moment his jaw tightened. I saw the flush of color rise up his neck. "This," he sputtered. "This is a contract." "It is a non-disclosure and non-exploitation agreement," I corrected him. "Julian drafted it yesterday." "I don't understand," my mother said, looking up with wide, innocent eyes. "What does it say?" "It says that if you want to walk out on that stage with me, and if you want to be part of my life moving forward, you agree to a few conditions." I explained, my voice steady and cool. "First, you will never speak to the press about me or my company without my written consent. Second, You will never claim to have been an early investor, advisor, or supporter of Meridian Aegis. Third, you will not use my name or my company's name to secure loans, social memberships, or business deals for yourselves. And fourth, you acknowledge that our relationship is personal only. There will be no financial transactions, no board seats, and no family discounts for your friends. The silence in the room was absolute. It was the sound of oxygen being sucked out of a fire. "You want us to sign a contract to be your parents?" my mother asked, her voice trembling with genuine shock. "Claire, this is insulting. We are family. You don't sign contracts with family." "You do when that family treats you like a business asset," I replied. "You uninvited me from Christmas because I hurt your brand. Now that I am the brand, you want back in. I am simply establishing the terms of the merger. Mother, isn't that what we do?" "This is ridiculous," Carter said, tossing the paper down. "You are being paranoid. We just want to be there for you. We are proud of you. Why do you have to make it so transaction-based?" "Because your love has always been a transaction, Carter," I said. "I am just putting it in writing." I looked at them. I looked at the people who had raised me, the people whose approval I had craved for 30 years. I saw the calculation in their eyes. They were weighing the cost. They wanted the photo op. They wanted the headline, "Hartwell Family Reunited at Billion-Dollar IPO." But they did not want to sign away their right to exploit it. They wanted the glory without the boundaries. "You are taking this too far," my mother said, her face hardening. "You are being cruel. We came here to make peace. We came here to heal, and you slap a legal document in our faces? You are making a mistake, Claire. You are going to be very lonely at the top if you treat people like liabilities." "I would rather be lonely than used," I said. My father took off his glasses. He looked at the contract, then at me. "I won't sign this. It is humiliating." "It is only humiliating if your intentions were to use me," I said. "If you truly just wanted to be my father, if you truly just wanted to celebrate your daughter, nothing in that document would bother you. It doesn't stop you from loving me. It only stops you from selling me." He didn't answer. He didn't have to. I reached out and took the papers back. I slid them into my portfolio. "That is what I thought," I said. I checked my watch. "I have to go. The market opens in 15 minutes. "Claire," my mother pleaded, standing up, "don't do this. Don't walk out there alone. People will talk. They will say you are estranged. They will say you are cold." I turned at the door and looked back at them. "Let them talk. I am done trying to control the narrative. I am just going to live the truth." "You are just doing this to punish us for Christmas," she spat out, the mask finally slipping. "You are still holding a grudge about the Wexler dinner." I smiled. It was a genuine, easy smile. "No, Mother," I said. "I am not doing this because of Christmas. I am doing this because I finally realized that you only wanted my Christmas because of Forbes." I walked out. I didn't look back. 10 minutes later, I stood on the podium at the NASDAQ. The lights were blinding. The applause was deafening. There were cameras broadcasting to millions of homes around the world. I stood there alone, and I had never felt stronger. The host handed me the microphone. I was supposed to give a standard speech about growth, shareholders, and the future of technology. I looked at the teleprompter. Then I looked at the camera. I knew my family was watching from the hotel room I had just left. I knew they were waiting for me to falter, or perhaps to mention them. "Success," I began, my voice clear and amplified through the speakers, "is often portrayed as a solitary journey, but the truth is, no one builds anything alone. I stand here today on the shoulders of the engineers, the coders, and the dreamers who built Meridian Aegis with me." I paused. The room went quiet. For a long time, I thought my value was determined by how well I fit into a picture painted by others. I was told I was embarrassing because I didn't follow the traditional path. I was told to hide my work because it didn't look like success to the people who mattered. I looked directly into the lens. But I learned a hard lesson this year. I didn't skip Christmas. I quit the role of the disappointment that others had cast me in. I decided that my dignity was not up for negotiation. A ripple of murmurs went through the crowd. This wasn't the usual corporate jargon. Today, as Meridian Aegis goes public, I am making a personal pledge. I continued. I am announcing the launch of the Hartwell Initiative, a $50 million scholarship fund for students in STEM fields. I took a breath. But this fund is specific. It is for the students who have been told they don't belong. It is for the misfits. It is for the people whose families don't understand their dreams. If you have ever been underestimated, if you have ever been uninvited from the table because you didn't look the part, this is for you. I want to give you the chance to build your own table. The applause that erupted was not polite. It was raucous. It was real. I rang the bell. The sound was sharp and clear, a tolling of the old hour and the beginning of the new. In the hotel room down the street, I imagined my family sitting in silence. They were watching the screen. They were seeing the ticker tape with my name on it. They were hearing the world cheer for the daughter they had hidden away. And in that moment, they understood. They weren't being punished with anger. They were being punished with irrelevance. They had tried to trade me for social standing, and in the end, they had lost both. I hadn't taken their money. I had simply taken my presence away from them. And that, they realized too late, was the most expensive thing they had ever lost. 6 months later, I walked into the lobby of the new Meridian Aegis headquarters in Austin. The sunlight was streaming through the floor-to-ceiling glass. On the far wall, near the entrance, was a framed copy of that Forbes magazine. For a long time, I had kept it in a drawer. I didn't want to look at it. It reminded me of the pain of that morning, the broken glass, the family standing on the sidewalk. But today, I had told the facilities manager to hang it up. I stopped in front of it. I looked at the face of the woman on the cover. She looked serious. She looked formidable. A young intern walked by, holding a stack of laptops. He stopped when he saw me looking at the picture. "That is a great photo, Ms. Hartwell," he said nervously. "Thank you," I said. Is it weird seeing yourself like that?" he asked, knowing that everyone knows the story. I looked at the headline, "The Uninvited Billionaire." "No," I said softly. "It is not weird. It is a reminder." "A reminder of what?" I turned to him and smiled. "A reminder that the people who ignore you when you are building the foundation are not the people you invite inside when the house is finished." I walked toward the elevators, ready to get to work. I had a meeting with the scholarship board. I had a company to run. And I had a Christmas to plan, one that would be exactly perfectly mine. Thank you so much for listening to my story. Please comment below and tell me where you are tuning in from. I would love to hear your thoughts on whether you would have signed that contract or walked away just like Claire did. If you enjoyed this story, please subscribe to Lila Revenge Stories. Hit that like button and press the hype button to help this video reach more people who need to hear that their worth is not negotiable.